It's all in the fine print, but the backlash is growing as many discover just how much data the social network has about them and their friends.
We all know our data is being collected. Every time you click I agree, you're giving up information and control. Our colleagues at Marketplace demonstrated that themselves last season when they created an app that gave them sweeping permissions and watched as people skimmed past the fine print.
I think I have to click or agree when I read those terms and conditions.
You didn't even read them.
I did.
But the implications really seem to have sunk in now, and the backlash has been swift.
Facebook shares are taking a nosedive.
Their stock has taken a hit over the last few days.
Lost close to $100 billion in value.
Facebook is in damage control, buying full-page ads, promising to do better. This after an investigative report by Channel 4 and The Guardian in London showed Facebook had allowed an app developer to scoop data on 50 million users and didn't do much to rein them in when it found out. That data was later used to try to influence elections. CEO Mark Zuckerberg finally met the cameras looking contrite.
And I'm really sorry that this happened.
Kurt Wagner is the senior editor of social media at online site Recode, which reports on the tech world. So how is the industry reacting? And how much of all this boils down to personal responsibility? So, Kurt, we all know that Zuckerberg is famously camera shy, but you, in fact, did interview him very recently about all of this. In your view, does he appreciate how upset people are?
Yeah, it's actually a question that we asked him at the end of our interview. We said, hey, there's the delete Facebook hashtag going around. Obviously, there's been a lot of backlash here. Basically, we asked him that. Are you aware of the fact that this is a big deal? And he said yes. He is taking it seriously. Facebook seems to be taking it seriously. And while it's not easy for people to feel bad for Mark Zuckerberg right now, I do think that he realizes that the company screwed up and they need to do something about it.
Your site has also spoken with Apple CEO Tim Cook this week, and he suggested that sites like Facebook shouldn't be allowed to police themselves, that regulations may be needed. We've got Microsoft now saying it's got enhanced privacy features. Has this started a kind of a snowball effect in the tech industry?
I think we are going to see more regulation. I think it's not only coming from the United States, of course, but obviously in the EU with the GDPR stuff. I think that these companies have kind of made peace with the fact that there needs to be more limitations around how they use data and what they collect. And so we're seeing companies like Facebook try to get ahead of that and roll out some of those, dashboards and things right away. So I don't think that this is I think it's far from over, but I think the companies have come to peace with the fact that there needs to be more rules.
The GDPR stuff in the EU that you just referenced, I'm not sure how many people really know the nuts and bolts of what's coming. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's basically a framework for companies that, take data from EU residents and that they have to do a better job of A, telling people what they're collecting, but B, giving them access to that data to either remove it or to alter it. And so, these laws are going to go into place in, I believe, mid-May. And after that, any company like a Facebook, like a Google, they're going to have to do a better job of just alerting people to what they collect and how it's being used. And I think that we're eventually probably going to see something like that outside of the EU too, but it's going to start in Europe.
Privacy settings have been there the whole time. A lot of the information contained on these sites, where, as I said, when you click agree, whose responsibility is it for making sure that people know what they've just given up? How much of this is on the individual?
I think a lot more than people would like to admit, right? I mean, yes, definitely companies like Facebook can do a better job of letting people know and being transparent about what they're collecting. At the same time, what we learned from Cambridge Analytica is that a lot of people were voluntarily handing this data over. And that comes with, reading the rules and regulations, reading your privacy settings. Most people don't do that because it's not very enjoyable. And sometimes it can be hard to find and hard to read. So it's both on the company to make it easier to find and easier to read, but also on people to take a little bit more responsibility about what they're sharing with these tech companies.
Facebook, Cambridge Analytica here in Canada. We've also got companies that have attached to this, Aggregate IQ. Are we going to hear more companies outed in terms of what they've done with the data?
I think there are more. I think there's going to be more Cambridge Analyticas out there. I mean, there was just too many years of kind of like unguarded data sharing from Facebook to third-party developers. And while we only know of like the one big situation right now, my guess is that we are going to hear about more in the coming months.
And I'm sure that's one of the stories you're following. Thanks for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.